Hey everybody, it is Rex the Dog, and in response to the Silent Hill transmission, which recently happened, we're going to go through a big analysis of the old stuff that we saw this week, because we saw the Silent Hill 2 remake trailer, we had a 13-minute gameplay video, and we had other materials released over the past week. So I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of stuff that I'm gonna miss. But let's just talk about kind of some of the stuff that I observed and some of the stuff from the notes that I've made and other people have made online. So first thing, we can talk about the release date trailer, which was shown during the State of Play. We see the entrance to the Toluca graveyard, and it looks like there's a longer path before you get to the graves in the original, but they just seem to be immediately there in the remake. And maybe something like that was done so you can see the forms of the graves through the gate and the fog as you approach. Really due to the switch of cameras. Because although the gravestones are further away in the original, right? Although they were further away in the original, you saw them instantly because of the kind of like semi-fixed camera angles that you've got going on. With this new third-person over-the-shoulder camera of the remake, that's going to kind of allow them to sort of come into vision as you're approaching it. We can hear Akira's new rendition of the Song of the Forest, which is pretty cool. We got our first look of Remake's Annula, who her outfit remains like identical, and her nose and eyebrows and all that sort of stuff's near identical as well. They have given her a little bit more of a baby face and a hairline that sort of covers her forehead. Personally, I'm quite happy they've realized how they've realized her, but we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that later because it's sort of been controversial, so to speak. Also, we've got like identical back ends of the animations there. The movements seem like identical how she's moving in the original, which involves her sort of like popping up from behind the grave, standing up, noticing James, and awkwardly squatting back to the grave. So that all kind of looks the same. I know it's like a small thing, but it's kind of cool they're mimicking the sort of stuff of the remake. They've added a new little touch of James reaching out his hand to her shoulder to get her attention, and her being startled and stepping away in shock. And I do kind of think something like that is like a fun thing, right? For the first, because like it as a first-time player, you can assume Angela's really either like surprised by James or didn't notice him, but this implies that maybe she's heard someone come in the graveyard and she's hiding from them and is startled by the male voice approaching her, which links into like, you know, the stuff with her father. It's like a slight PTSD moment, so I think that's cool. And they make that more obvious as we go later into the trailer, because we get the her holding the knife and these little flashes and stuff like that. A lot of stuff, and that stuff with the knife is really well recreated as well. So a bunch of kind of, you know, solid recreation stuff that was actually in the original, that was actually like a CG cutscene, but here we got them kind of realized in engine. There's a new shot that wasn't in the original where we get Angela sort of staring at her reflection in the knife, which I think is a really kind of like clever addition to the scene. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. Dialogue in all these scenes is kind of like near identical, slight alterations and tweaks here and there. I noticed they've given Angela sort of like this more like deer in headlights sort of look as she steps further away. In both, she's making, you know, sort of excuses to a stranger. Seems like she's trying to, like, apologize. And I do kind of miss the wall of fog that was sort of there. It seems to be a lot less in the new one, but I don't know. It's interesting how, like, you know, with the different performances by the new actors, even though you've got, like, dialogue which is near, like, identically the same, you're getting a real difference in tone. And personally, at this point, I kind of like both for different reasons. I think many are going to be just sort of used to the original more, so they're going to need time for the adjustments. James gives off really different vibes, but different never means bad. And it is sort of interesting how he's sort of trying to like disarm her, and casually shake off sort of the awkwardness of the scene. Where in the original, he comes off him more distant and awkward. I don't know, it seems like James is a bit more sort of like humanized here, which I don't know, maybe we can kind of talk about whether that's an interesting thing or not. The city, some of the city shots sort of like hard to place where they are. We get to see the Silent Hill post office, which is, in the original one, which is pretty cool. I think it was interesting difference in how they framed the "I think you should stay away" line, because in the remake Angela is much further distance framed, as James is off to the side and looming over in like full frame, implying this kind of like double entendre, stay away from the town and from herself, when in the original James just starts to like step away and Angela reaches out a hand as if trying to make up what she did earlier. However, analyzing the original scene, you do kind of see a continuity mistake. Angela's sort of like changing poses and whatever, but whatever. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just her arm kind of moves places. But it's just interesting when you're kind of like hyper-analyzing and look at these two scenes side by side, you kind of see these comparisons. I think some of the like shots that you're seeing of the town next and like outside the jeweler's hall and stuff like that, I do think the lighting looks really good on this. I think the game's drastically improved since we first saw it, and I think a lot of that comes down to the lighting, and I think a lot of that comes down to the sound design. I think some of the animations of the characters still seem kind of awkward. I don't think that is a choice. I just think that is how they've turned out. But I do think it does I think that kind of like stiffness in movement in Silent Hill has benefits to it. So, I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. We see the abstract daddy, that we're kind of like doing a bit of an Angela story through this. He's covered in darkness. I think it's like, that's like a totally new shot. Whether that's in the game or whether that's just for the trailer, that's something that really there isn't like a direct comparison to it in the original. And now they've said it's going to be like a crazily, mostly faithful remake, so I'm sure there's going to be tons of stuff, as I kind of talked about so far with Angela in the graveyard and like approaching the town and the post office and whatever. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff where we can directly like be like, whoa, and do the comparison, but I think there's going to be some stuff obviously not, right? There's going to be new scenes and stuff like that, and that's obviously totally normal. We saw James pulling off the sheet on the clock, and we find so it's like a puzzle which we had in the Woodside apartments, right? It does look slightly different with a new compartment. I don't know, but we got these kind of puzzles coming back. We get that shot of the Lakeside Diner, which I think is just like an entirely new location on the west side part of the map. So I guess sort of expect an expansion of Silent Hill itself, or at least maybe expect an extension of Silent Hill as it pertains to Silent Hill 2. Like, I think we're gonna get maybe some streets and some places and locations that we only maybe saw in like 1 and 3, and we kind of get that merged into 2 to make like a bigger town. Because some of it, just in general, were really like strong Silent Hill 1-esque sort of things. I don't know. I don't know, maybe we'll see. Because you do see a pretty damn faithful recreation of the school bus, which you can like get into in Silent Hill 1, so I don't know, man. Maybe we're gonna get like other stuff. We start to get our first shots of like otherworld stuff. We get like Brookhaven Hospital, those long hallways and stuff. I think it looks great. Unless I'm forgetting something, it looks like there was some new rooms, entry rooms in the otherworld section of Brookhaven Hospital, which had some like table and stuff, and maybe that's some sort of puzzle. I don't know. There's on top of that a new scene with Angela. I was gonna try and get my tongue, man. A new scene with Angela saying like you shouldn't be here. And no, cool. It like the new scenes for Angela and the new scenes for Eddie and like whichever other ones they're putting in. I think this is a really cool thing to just like expand the characters and expand the game more. And some of it sort of, especially some of the new sort of like otherworld locations and shots we're getting, they seem to be like resemblance of like some like Ito concept art we've seen, which hasn't been like realized in games yet. So I don't know, I think there could be some like really cool new visuals in this game, and I think there could be some really cool new scenes from some of the characters that maybe help sort of like flesh things out. But I mean, we'll totally see. We did get to see a bit of the combat while we're in the other world. They seem to have gotten rid of sort of like the QTE prompts that were in the other trailer, which is great because I think that's too sort of video gamey, right? James still does seem to have that ability to sort of like do the dodge if timed right, but it seems to be like reduced of like, not like here's a QTE. We do see James cripple an enemy and following up with like a knockdown strike, which lets him do one of the finisher moves, which was like in original SH2 when you've knocked enemies on the ground. And it seems like there's a few nurse variations here, which is cool, because I guess kind of like an earlier complaint a lot of people had is like the nurses all look the same and the nurses all look way too clean. But now it seems like they've gone back to like Ito artwork and be like, okay, we got like normally ones, we got black greasy ones, we got otherworldly looking ones, which is really, really cool. It was cool to see the lion figure crawling around. Looks kind of cool. Again, some of the animation's a little bit stiff, but I think that kind of serves the weirdness of Silent Hill 2. I'm trying to think, and I'm looking through my list of like other stuff that we were seeing. I mean, generally kind of like my sentiment is my expectations for this game are incredibly, incredibly low, right? Because I think that Bloober Team, especially when they're like trying to remake something, or whether they're like under, you know, the guidance or direction of like a bigger company, I think that's when they sort of really, really fail. I do think like Layers of Fear, like on its own, has value to it. I think The Observer has value to it. I think there's really cool stuff in that. But Medium, which I think was like a big sort of like PS5 project, sucked balls. I mean, the first trailer for this kind of like sucked balls, but so my expectations were really, really low. But I think in seeing this trailer and all the other sort of like material around it, it like first looks a lot better, because I thought the game kind of looked ass before, just from like a graphical standpoint. And there's just a few things I think are kind of charming to it. Like, I do think the kind of the combat, I think the blockiness of it does look charming and like quite playable to me. I think the lighting looks really cool. I think the potential of, you know, being able to go to down additional streets and whatever in Silent Hill is a benefit, because Silent Hill is like such a huge character in the thing. I think the new scenes that we're gonna get, like with Angela or whoever, I think that's really, really cool. I think there's some cool little details of like, you know, like in the gameplay stuff, like the lack of HUD, because like it's never been a game about the HUD, it's been a game about the story, about the psychology, whatever. I do think that like the red border going around to kind of show the health, I think that needs to go, or at least be able to turn it off, because I think that is the opposite of immersion. I do really like some of the little visual flourishes they've added. Now, I'm a huge fan of the map in Silent Hill, and I really like how the markings and stuff are made to it, and I just kind of like, I'm just really interested in the geography of the town, and I'm interested in the map as like a, you know, a tool for the player to use, and I'm also interested in as a tool for like environmental storytelling and, you know, in-game persistence, right? So like, you know, when you go somewhere and you find it's a dead end, it gets marked on the map. Now, this cool like visual flourish that Blue Wolf put in is when James is making certain changes to his map from new info, he physically puts it on the map and he draws on with the Sharpie. I thought that was really cool. That moment in the 13-minute gameplay where he gets the map out and then he marks it with the pen, I was like, this is really, really cool. Also, when he's in the, you know, the Brook Hill Hospital and he finds a map and he like takes it off the wall and he like folds it up, or maybe he takes it from like a thing of brochures and he folds it up. I think those sorts of details are really, really cool. I think picking up the items and the interaction with the items and stuff like that, it all looks really, really good. Like picking up the notes and the letters and the envelopes and like, you know, it's like basic stuff, but I think it's really cool. I think it's really, really cool. And I mean, just on the topic of the map, when we do go to Brookhaven Hospital and he gets that first floor map, it looks like it's expanded quite a lot. So that section might be, you know, fairly significant. It seems like they've kept the famous red square the SH2 used for save points, because we see that in the game. I don't know, I just think some of those little details, like with the map and like interacting with items, and he makes a little noise, he goes like, when he's like looking at something, when he picks up to read it. I know these are like details that don't matter, but I just kinda thought they were cool. The action hasn't got me really scared. That looks okay. The combat, I think the clunkiness is adding to it. It seems like you can, you know, sneak around the enemies, which is cool. I'm not super sure about some of the, like, what seems to be heavily scripted stuff. Like, it seems like the lights are sort of flickering on and off to reveal and hide nurses and stuff like that. I don't know, it's just like a bit too like cinematic for me, and feels scripted, feels really scripted. But maybe they happen in gameplay and I don't actually mind that it kind of all serves it. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, I'm kind of looking down my list and just sort of like flicking through the video. I don't know, man. Optimistic. I don't think this is going to be a great game. It does still very much feel like, you know, Konami have looked at the success of the Resident Evil remakes, you know, so like specifically Resident Evil 2, and have gone like, hey, go copy the homework. Right? You know, switching it to the... I know that, like, you know, these old sort of styles of games are not really accessible to people, but... You know, all to them, all power to them, but I don't think it's going to get that same level of, like, success that maybe they hope from. That the, you know, RE2, RE4 has gotten. I'm not going to talk about 3. And the kind of third party, you know, threw that out. But I don't know. I'm a lot more excited than I was. It's not going to be to the level where I'm going to, like, pay the extra money to get this, like... Because you can pay more money and get the game, like, early, like 2 days early. I'm not about that, but I'll be picking this up on, like, true day one. I'll be playing through it. I mean, I was always gonna, right? But I'm just a bit more excited than I was before. That was just 20 minutes of me rambling about Silent Hill 2. I don't know who the audience is for that, but if you enjoyed it, I mean, isn't that cool?